Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brand new episode of Christine Means Business. And it is one of my favorites because I'm not on my own, but I have a formidable person from my circle of friends with me, and she is fab. So let me introduce you to Kathy Armillas, who was my coach when I did my TEDx talk in December 2019. And it's a typical Christine story, I would probably say. And so here's the whole spiel that happened before it. Basically, I had invested a huge amount into an opportunity to get on stage with other speakers, to be introduced to people who hire speakers for events, and specifically also to get a TEDx event. But what happened was that they couldn't guarantee that the right agents or scouts would be there. And as it happened, nothing came of it. So me being myself and a little bit frustrated and impatient, I just went to the TEDx site and to the TED site, and I looked at all the different talks that are happening. And I actually looked in my vicinity and I just emailed maybe 5 different spaces where I saw that it would be in the next few months and where I thought the topic would be a great fit. And lo and behold, the next day I had an answer where they were like, yes, you'd be a great fit. And the talk is in December. And that was early October, I believe. So there I was. And I knew that this is big, it's like everyone wants a TEDx or a TED Talk. It's this logo that has quite a lot of clout. It's something that, being on their YouTube channel is just something really, really amazing. And I had no clue how to do that talk. Usually I wing my things. I manage quite well, but I knew this is going to be on the internet living forever and going to potentially be seen by tons of people. I really want to make this seriously. And I was looking for someone who could help me with that. The way that I found Kathy was actually through LinkedIn. And I remember I just LinkedIn searched coach TEDx talk or something like that. I don't even remember. And we got in touch and we had a really great relationship. We talked about so many different things through different time zones. It was really early Kathy's time, really late my time. And it was an incredible experience for me. And it was easy, I want to say. Like, there was work in it, but it was a beautiful flow. So I cannot wait to introduce you now to Kathy and to have, I'm just shamelessly going to pick her brain for you guys. Because there's a lot of anxiety sometimes I feel about TEDx talks or TED Talks. And I really want to get that out of the way, because I've seen 2 different ways of, having coaches who script the whole thing with you and you need to practice it, word by word, the same thing. And Kathy's strategy is a little bit different, and also the way how she coaches you to get to your topic and so forth. So Kathy, I've been talking enough. Welcome so much. And thank you to be here.
Christine, you're brilliant. I could listen to you forever. I could just sit here and listen to you. You're so wonderful to listen to talk. I love how we met, and you're so brilliant. I love your story about how you did all this stuff, and this company and this agent was supposed to put you in front of these people, and you were like, I'm too patient. I'll just get it myself. And you figured out how to do it the right way intuitively. So good for you. And LinkedIn. Oh my God, I'm so glad that LinkedIn decided that we should be friends.
Exactly. LinkedIn is this magical tool that it's saving me whenever I need to. It's just, I don't use it a lot, but it's like this fairy godmother of social networks, I feel. It's amazing.
Oh my God. I feel like it's the only place right now where there's not a bunch of hatred and stuff. People can go and be really be awesome. You can be awesome on LinkedIn. So I'm in love with LinkedIn right now. So anyways, thanks for having me. I love to be here with you. It's awesome.
Well, it's a huge honor, actually, because I checked you out later after I emailed you, because I never do my research properly, or I do a little bit, and then I saw that you've been working with all these huge companies like Nike. You coached lots of TED Talk people. And I was like, oh my God, it's actually a big deal. Crap. But we got along so well. And we kicked the whole thing off by you introducing me to how you coach your people. And then basically we implemented and went through it. And I found it really refreshing because you asked a couple of questions or explained a couple of things that I just thought were mind changing to how you can actually approach a TED Talk. Because the other people that had the TED Talks with me obviously didn't have a coach. They were okay, but there was a difference. So I would love for you to, for those who are listening and who have this little idea of getting a talk. First of all, I hope that through the introduction, you now realize that it's not as difficult as you think it might be. You don't have to spend a gazillion of dollars for an agent to find you a TED Talk or TEDx talk. There's a difference, and we might just want to explain that very quickly. And then when we have someone who's like, okay, I really have something to share, before you think you have the amazing idea, there was a huge process step. It's just one step, but it was huge for me because you made it very clear what TED stands for and what the different questions are that you have to ask yourself. So I'd love to go through those very quickly so that people who have this idea, who might now have the courage to actually go for it, can actually already maybe start, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. God, your journey, it's inspiring, and somehow it should be a warning to others, right?
I'm very
do it this way, right? I love that about you, Christine. You're such a tenacious person, and anybody who's in your circle of friends knows that that's a beautiful thing. And I think for your audience, if they're like, I truly believe this, like with all my heart. And it's really hard sometimes because lots of people come to me and they're like, oh, I have this really good idea for a TED Talk. And then they tell me, and I'm like, you're really far away. Like, yeah, you're not there yet. But I believe that everybody does have a TED Talk within them. I just think that sometimes people are so caught up in like, I have to give a TED Talk, or I want to give a TEDx talk. And they get so overwhelmed with that thought that they don't really stop and really think like, what is TED all about? Well, TED's about spreading ideas. So you have to have a good idea that you're sharing. And, you and I did a lot of work on that. You could even be living, breathing, doing your ideas for, you're doing your idea that you're going to talk about for 30 years, but it's so close to you that you don't really know how that idea can blossom in the minds of other people. So, when you and I first start working together, I always do this thing I call like the Uniquify process. I blank slate everything. I'm like, we're blank slating everything about your topic. And we're going to start from zero. And first thing you need to ask yourself is, if I was giving a talk on this topic, what would everybody expect me to say? Whatever those things are, write those out and don't say those things.
Exactly, which is like,
So and that seems so simplistic of like, it should be a unique way. It doesn't have to be a unique idea in what is being done or thought of, but it should be unique the way you present it. There shouldn't be anybody in the world that has your exact experience. And so why does everybody try to copy the way other people do it? It doesn't make any sense to me. Find your uniqueness and your unique spin on that angle. Some people get to an idea through tragedy. Like nobody else has suffered that same exact tragedy in the same way you did, and you found an idea in that way. That's a gift to the world. If you can pull out of the depth of that the idea and bring it to life. So yeah, I think it's first just starting with the idea. Now, you wanted to talk about the difference between TED and TEDx. Christine, you probably know that full well now, but everybody just thinks TED. And of course, TED started over 30 years ago now. Started back in 1984 with a dream of a guy who started it, Richard Saul Warman. He was like, I just want to bring people together in these three industries: technology, entertainment, and design. I think it'd be really cool to hear people speaking in that space. And of course, here we are 30 plus years later, and it's turned into something so much more. But the TEDx's are beautiful because the TEDx came onto the scene in 2009, and it became this kind of more localized. We have a TEDx Portland. Yeah, you did a TEDx at a university. There's TEDx's everywhere that are looking to do a little bit more. Like, let's talk about ideas that might be a little bit more local to us. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the idea is still very global. virtual, but it's still a cool experience because prior to 2020, we used to get together in rooms and do them live. And it's such a cool experience if you've never been to a TED event, to sit a whole day and just listen to ideas. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you have to take your time, be open-minded, and it's exactly what you say. You sit down and you listen to ideas that are not, as you said, necessarily new, but they have a spin on it that is just, you know, if you have your brain, it's just like a shovel, creating a little bit more space with something that you'd never thought of, you know, and it's just, that's what I love about it. I mean, sometimes they can be mind-blowing to you. It can shift your whole paradigm. And sometimes it's just a little practical idea. And I love them because they have helped me a lot in personal development, but they've also helped me in business. Of course, everyone is referring to Simon Sinek's What is Your Big Why? It's like one of the biggest TED Talks. But it has helped me actually to win a competition in entrepreneurship because I built my presentation based on that.
That's awesome, also, by the way.
yeah, that was my very first year in business. I don't have that business anymore, but I still won an award for it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it was really helpful. And then through that, obviously, when I was in the world of sleep, you have a lot of TEDx's and TED Talks on sleep. And it's beautiful because it brings, one of the challenges of such a talk is that it has to be able to be understood by everyone. So you don't necessarily dumb it down, but you just have a language that's understandable, which is such a big challenge as well. And it's beautiful because anything you are interested in, you will find a topic on it on the TED platform, but that might have a spin to it that you've never considered before. So
you might find a topic that you didn't think you had any interest in.
Exactly.
And you watch it and you're like,
whoa. You told me like there was this fact about a dentist, you know, and there was this one little fact, I don't remember what it was, but I still, you know, that's like,
it was the brushing the teeth. I was coaching a lady who is a dentist, and she was from France, and she went all around the world, and she was teaching people about, you know, dental hygiene. And she said, you know, the 2 minute thing's actually a myth. People spend a lot of time brushing their actual teeth, but you should spend more time brushing your tongue and the roof of your mouth. And people don't do that a lot. But everybody's got this like myth of like 2 minutes on the teeth, 2 minutes. And so she was talking about more the holistic. And so see, that's a great idea because you're breaking the mold of what you thought. You just thought you had to put a toothbrush in your mouth for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is something that stuck in my head when we work together, and what I want everyone to consider. Breaking that mold. Like if you have something new to add, or if you can break or, you know, have a myth buster, or give people permission to do something that traditionally is a taboo or just not well seen, that is potential for, you know, a talk.
Well, in your talk too, Christine, it's brilliant. I loved spending time with you. I love you cared about your topic so much. And sometimes people can fall into one of two categories. They can be really kind of cocky about their idea and like, I live this all the time. And it's like, well, you still have to bridge the gap for people that don't think about sleep 24/7, you know, because, you know, everybody seems that when you're an expert in something and you do something all the time, you get really geeky about it and you think about it more than anybody else does. And that's cool. But it also makes a blinder for you in that you have the corruption of your knowledge, your own knowledge. And so you don't understand that 90% of what you know, people don't ever even think about.
Exactly.
So it was a challenge with you, I remember, of just I was like, oh my God, you're telling me so many great things that I had no idea about sleep. Like, how do we hone in on the one thing as opposed to like throwing up all your knowledge? And I think that's the most unprepared person, is a person that believes that they're trying to give so much information and they're giving you too much and they don't have that idea. At the end of the day, when you're done with a TED Talk, so you should change the way somebody thinks, acts, or feels. Like, you know, what are they going to think different? Are they going to act different? They don't always have to act different, but you might just make them feel different about it. Mm-hmm. So I think you did a really good job and you worked really hard, which is awesome. You're like the perfect student, if you will, because, you know, sometimes people think if I just check the box of hiring a coach, I'm done. I'm going to have this beautiful talk. The coach doesn't do your talk,
No.
as you know.
And I'm the biggest procrastinator on earth. And I know that, traditionally, and you started one of your lessons with how many days and how many times you should practice. And I was like, okay, I need 6 months, and I have like one or one and a half.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, that's just me because that's the way I work in a way. But for all of the people, who need that preparation time, just take your time. Just a little word of advice. But it's very, very true. I think if you get a coach, I think honestly, personally, I think it's a terrible idea not to get someone to help you.
Totally agree. I mean, it's not even like, I'm not even like, don't even like hire me, like hire somebody. Like when I was doing my TED Talk, there's no way in hell I was going to do it without a coach. I had multiple coaches.
Exactly. Please, please, please do get help by someone who's done this before and who is good at what they do. Yeah. But in the end, it's a tough process. It's not a tough, but it's an intense process because you do need to question yourself. You do need to, as you say, blank slate yourself. And you say so many poignant things that make you really reconsider the whole topic that you are talking about. And then you just have to do it. And obviously you do have to practice. I love public speaking. It's something that I intuitively usually do well, even though I'm still dying each time I have to do it. And I'm 5 minutes before I'm like, why did I agree to this?
And then 5 minutes after, you're like, oh my God, this feels great.
I'm in a comatose state. But it's, that works for me. But you still have to take on board what you're being told. And you still need to have that time of preparation to make it your own, to make it a part of yourself. If you don't stay in touch, if you don't do the homework, it's not going to work. I mean, we had a short, intense, I would say, coaching period together, but that is what works well for me, But in general, I would probably not suggest that.
Well, again, I think you worked really hard, Christine. I would have been really, really nervous. And I told you this when we first met, like my typical runway is minimum of 3 months. And that sometimes scares people because, I've worked with people 9 months. I've worked with people longer than a year. But it doesn't mean that we're working every day. I just think that sometimes you have to reflect and have some space and time. I mean, we talked about a lot of things. I remember when we first chatted, I was like, oh my God, there's like 20 TED Talks in here. Like, it's going to be hard to we got to really narrow down first. But when you give yourself that space to think on a point and then you build up a little bit and then you go, that's good, but it's not the right direction. You just give yourself that time to let it grow. Yeah. And you did all the things that you needed to do, but boy, I would not recommend that for many people because it does take a lot of discipline to do it. And you stayed up really late many nights and doing recordings and crazy things I'm telling you to do because I do things different than everybody. Like I definitely don't believe in memorizing a script. I think that's horrible. No. I mean, I'll go on record to say I think that's the worst idea ever, like ever. If anybody's listening and there's anything that they take from what I'm saying, I don't care what talk you're ever doing, like, please don't ever do it because you've memorized it. Like, oof.
I love that advice because I did too. The talk that I gave before in April was entirely memorized and it still worked, but it stressed me out 5 gazillion times more. The only thing that stressed me out during the TED Talk the TEDx talk was that I thought I skipped a huge part when I didn't, because I didn't have the outline. Like, I don't know, when I learned it by heart, I remember my mouth moving, the words coming out and me thinking, you actually know this by heart at the same time as I was speaking my things. Whereas when I did it, I knew some things by heart, but most of it was just because I knew what I was going to say. It was more connecting. It was literally more of a pivot to explain.
Well, I don't know if you remember me saying this, but I always say you should internalize your talk, not memorize it.
Yes.
When you internalize it, even if, and it's weird. This is a weird thing to say, and I know it's harder in this space, but when you're in a room full of people, it's funny how if you're starting here and you're ending here, you could go this way one time, you could go this way. the room gives you, the audience gives you the answer, by the way. I mean, if you're memorizing something, you can never connect with the audience, because you literally are doing this thing where you'll see people look up because they're reading the back of their brain. They'll look up for a second and they're just looking for the words. But when you're in a room full of people and you've internalized it and you know it by heart, like you said, it's not that you've memorized every word. You've internalized the route and where you want to take them. And so sometimes different words come out of your mouth, and that's okay. Like, it's what they needed to hear. And so you did that beautifully. It was proof by, at the end of your talk, you and I talked about doing this technique, which is a little dicey, by the way. Anybody who watched her talk should know that this is a scary thing. And I knew she could pull it off, but to ask a room full of people to do anything in a TED talk, it's not the typical format, but you pulled it off. And I think one of the big reasons that you pulled it off, Christine, was because you had the calmness to run everybody through that exercise and not rush them through it. To actually, when I listened to your talk after it went live, and it was on the internet, I remember I was getting ready somewhere. I'm like curling my hair. I'm getting ready. And I stopped and I did what you said.
You did?
I did, because you were so convincing, and that takes a lot of guts. You're asking everybody to get into this state and close their eyes, and you have to sell it. And you did. You can't just say, okay, I want everybody to close their eyes and we're going to, you really sold that calm moment. So it was great.
Yeah, no, I literally took a deep breath and I was just like, just do it. Like, don't think about it. Like, just do it. And it was a beautiful room, I have to say. It was a great crowd to do it with. And I was just like, I trust them. So hopefully they trust me. And it's a beautiful relationship. But yeah.
But do you see how you said you trusted them? Like, you wouldn't have known that had you memorized your entire script. You wouldn't have been in tune with, there's no way you can be in tune because you're only in your head when you're memorizing something. And so you don't know for sure. Sometimes people that memorize things, don't get me wrong, if you're a complete actor and you've taken acting, maybe you can act your way through it. But people know that anyways. They know when something's scripted because it's too perfect. And then they know that there's this big wall and you haven't broken through it. Breaking through the fourth wall is making that connection with the audience. So, when you said you trusted them, by the time you got to the end, you knew it because you felt it, right? I mean, weren't you in that space where you felt the audience, you knew? Yeah. You can't do that when you memorize stuff. So that's my word of advice to anybody. It's better to be a less perfect version of you and being live with your audience than to be a perfect version of something that was written on a piece of paper.
Quote that. Yes. That's a tweet. No, seriously, that's, I think, why we connected so well too. It's just these things are very organic. They're very honest, very much in integrity with who you are. And it's not easy, but I think it's the best way to do it. So I would, totally trust you in this. I really want to do one again at some point. I want to do it live. So whenever this whole thing is over, this time on business, I'm sure, it's just, obviously everyone needs to know who they want to work with, but this is definitely what I want to do again. So that was a big one, I think. That helped me to not feel as terrified of the talk, because I knew, oh, thank God, I don't need to learn it by heart like you do in primary school or in high school. That was a big one. And the other thing was that at the end, I knew that I had an idea that would be, I don't want to say necessarily beneficial for people, but it would leave them better off in a way, just like having a new perspective and a calmness and a positivity around it. And I think that's also something when you think about technology, entertainment design, sometimes we feel like we don't fit in, and it's not true. You can combine so many different angles to these three topics with what is your message in the end. But I think it is important that, yes, as you say, not everyone has a TED Talk straight away, even if you think you do. And unfortunately, that's also something I want to talk very quickly about. You're not being vetted on your talk, right? So nobody had asked me, they asked me very quickly to send them an outline, but you're not there's nobody really coaching you of the official team usually, or of smaller TEDx's at least, that is going to go over it and say, actually, this is not right. And you might regret having used that idea because you can't do the same idea twice, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you are being vetted in a way. Well, so you're right. There's a difference. There's also everybody's running, the TEDx's are all run a little bit different. TED has definitely a brand standard, which is really strong. I mean, if you just think about the physicality of how all TEDx and TED Talks are recorded, they are recorded with a minimum of 2 camera angles and somebody standing on a dot and not moving. So, I mean, that was all intentional. They wanted the person to focus so much on the ideas that they don't want there to be theatrics or anything else. And, it's crazy to think that there's children all over the world that aren't interested in anything else, but they love TED Talks. So it's crazy, right? It's almost this weird voodoo magic thing.
It is. And that's something that I didn't know before you told me, is like, yeah, you have lots of kids binging on TED Talks.
Oh, binging. Like if you ask a kid, it's funny, like if you ask a kid about like what's Toastmasters, they're like, I don't know what that is. And then if you ask them about TED, they're like, oh yeah, we watch TED Talks all the time in class and stuff. And it's just so much so you're always being vetted on your idea. Like that is like, we're told as TED organizers, TED coaches, the idea is king, it's queen. It has to be the first and foremost. It has to be something that person has never really talked about before either. You can't if you would have given the same talk on a TED stage, they wouldn't have let you done it if they're doing their job, right? Like you should be talking about it in a different way. So the vetting process, I mean, there's a lot in there, at TEDx Portland, where I coach and I'm a part of, we vet very differently than we figure out the topics that we want and we go find the amazing people doing those things. Other TEDx events allow people to submit, and then they look at their theme and go, oh yeah, an idea on sleep would be awesome. So would this, so would this, so would this. So I think you did the smart thing, Christine. If you're out there, if any of your audience is out there and they want to give a TED Talk, look at the TED Talks that are around you. Look at the TEDx events that are around you. Find the ones, go look at their I'd go look at their past videos, by the way. You should be vetting them as much as they're vetting you, by the way.
Oh, yes. No, I heard nightmare scenarios of people turning up and there was no real equipment. They had a bath mat instead of the red dot. It was in a terrible room. With
a bath mat. That is a first.
It's like, and they were like, we're not going to do it because it's going to ruin our opportunity here, So
absolutely.
Do due diligence.
Oh, please do that. Well, and I just told you about there's an event, I won't say where it happened, but almost half of the talks that were done the day that they did the event, they had to throw them in the trash basically because the audio wasn't working correctly. And even the ones that they were able to salvage, it was really, really not great audio. So if you can imagine, do you want to show yourself on that kind of light later? Do you want that to be on the internet forever? Every time somebody says, I watch your TED Talk, you're cringing. You're like, sorry, It was really bad audio. And that reflects on you. So yes, to your audience, vet them as much as they're vetting you, but they are vetting you. I promise you that. And you're being vetted on your idea. So have a good one,
No, for sure. But I think that's a good challenge to do, So yeah. And even having that idea, I think it's very poignant what you said in the beginning, is that just because you think it's an amazing, unique idea really doesn't mean that it is. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And it's impossible because it's your blind spot. It's just your passion. It's your blind spot. So it's impossible for you to judge really if it's good or not. And then the other thing is you have your time constraints. So how you make it flow, we use a certain strategy to make sure that it wasn't boring, obviously, on how to structure the whole thing. So maybe that's also something we can quickly touch on.
Yeah. The structure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, once we find the idea out, as you know, Christine, you have to find the best way to hold this idea in light. And, sometimes if you think about the whole array of movies that you've ever watched, there's different ways that you present the movie, right? Sometimes there's this crazy scene and it's the end of the movie, and then they unwind and go back. So sometimes that's a technique. One of the things that I love as a coach is I get to work with a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of really cool things, various, countries. I'm working with people all over the world, various industries, various ages, everything. And, there's no cookie cutter anything, right? There's nothing that you can just cookie cut and say, oh, you have to do it exactly like this. So it's really just trying to say, like, is it a new idea? Like, is it a really new spin or a new idea that you need to first educate? You need to get them to a point before you drop the idea? Is it something they won't understand? And so you have to first lead them along the way, leave kind of breadcrumbs and then get them there. Is it something they've heard a million times? And so you have to break them. You have to say something shocking in the beginning and then spend your whole time unwinding what they thought they knew about this to lead them to an ending. So but it's important. And I'm glad you put a point on it, because it's important the way that you speak and the way that you flow things. And it's just like, think about if you're having a conversation with your child, right? There's two different ways. Well, there's a million different ways, but there's two major different ways that you can say things to them, right? Either you could be like, hey, you're not going to do this because I said you're not going to do this. And that doesn't work though, right?
You can always try. I mean,
you can try.
As soon as they turn 6, I will promise you they'll have a smart answer to say, well.
Exactly, right? And then there's this way where you have to be more, you have to give more, you have to add more psychology to it, and you have to be smarter in the way that you do it. And so I always think of a TED Talk like that. It's like you have your audience, and there's a whole array of thoughts and filters and what people think and believe. And you have to take the general you have to open, you said this at the beginning, but like, you have to make it universal. You have to kind of think about everybody in your audience. Like for you, for instance, you gave a good idea. Christine, you made me think different about sleeping. And I'm somebody who I've thought about sleeping a lot in the past, because I used to be like a really, really late night person, and I barely would get any sleep. And then I kind of changed my biorhythm a little bit, and I started doing better. But you made me think about sleep in a different way, even though I had been thinking about it. But your audience isn't just sleep deprived people. It's people that maybe sleep really well, and it's everybody. So you had to like find a way to make that idea work for everybody, or for everybody to get something out of it. So it is important the way you lay it out.
Yeah.
You can't just come and be like, I have this information, I'm going to share it. Here it is. And then thank you. Like,
yeah, doesn't work. And also don't push it to be too exotic. Like, don't think because you need to reinvent the wheel that suddenly you need to, I know you had people reciting poetry or, turning things into haiku or whatever,
Yeah.
It works, but sometimes it really doesn't. And just, it needs to be new.
Don't do it just because you can.
Exactly. And that was a beautiful lesson too, where it was just like, no, this isn't working. It's just like,
yeah, it's funny because in my program, I called that the cool factor. And it was the one thing that I put a huge point on. I was like, don't do something that you think is cool because you think it's cool. I've seen a lot of people do some really cool things and it works, but you definitely have to check yourself. You have to say, yes. Is this really, really going to work? Or is this just me trying to be really cool? And I'm that person that your kids are like, you're not cool, Mom. Like, don't do it. I know, you're like, but I think I'm cool.
I know. Just like, so, dancing to the 90s is totally cool. I mean, what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Well, Christine, I love that. I love that for your audience too. I love the title of your show. Christine means business. I love that, by the way.
Just like straight out there.
and everything is business, and it's so you too. But I love what you're bringing up, and I love that you're ripping behind the scenes of what you did to get your TED Talk, because there's so many people out there that want to give them. So I love that you're opening. You're kind of showing behind the scenes of like what you did that failed. failed, what you did that worked, how you got a coach. We're talking about some of the things, you know, how you went from memorizing to non-memorizing. And I think you're giving you're opening a lot of good tips and ideas for people to really consider and think about. It's
well,
awesome.
I really hope so. You know, that's what I'm aiming to do. And that's why I bring on people like you know, because we've worked together. I can vouch for you. All the people that I have on as guests, I usually know very well. Most of them I've hired at some point, you know, because they were good experiences. So I know that I can have my audience, that I can entrust them with my audience. But I think what's also really important is that it is important to also talk about the negative experiences that we had, you know, because I'm sick and tired of only seeing great testimonials everywhere. And I'm not saying you should badmouth anyone, but just be aware of certain things, especially because we do, especially in the beginning, spend a lot of hard-earned money. And I think you should just be aware of some red flags that can be there and some do's and don'ts, you know. And Christine Mintz Business is about that. It's about integrity, it's about honesty, it's about efficiency and elegance, of course.
Of course.
Golden microphone. So
oh my God, I love your microphone.
It's so all beautiful. The
bling. Wow, it's super bling. I love it.
So it's just, you know, hopefully this has helped maybe some people who were too afraid of even thinking or having imposter syndrome of even being considered for a TEDx or a TED Talk. It's not as scary as you think. It can be super, super simple. But as always, I would really recommend, like, the last word of advice is to have someone work with you, someone who's experienced in this, because it's different from keynotes, from conference keynotes or public speaking. It's not the same thing. So that's just my advice. And I hope that through this interview with Kathy, it's become clear that you are awesome and that it's been such a pleasure to work with you, such an honor. And as I said, I do want to do a TEDx again, or a TED. And, you know, it's
good. You have more in you, Christine.
Yes, so and I know I'd be telling you, hey, it's in 2 months. No, I'm kidding.
You could give a TED Talk just on how you run your business, because I think it's beautiful. And
that's already something. We're on to something. So stay tuned, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Right, Kathy. So if there is someone who's like, okay, I want to do this, maybe even specifically right now where things are being done online as well, how can they reach out to you? How do they get in touch with you if they want to, you know, just send you an email or send you a message or just stalk you with love, of course?
Well, the good thing about my name, because it's a Spanish last name and I'm American, you know, nobody in the world is named Kathy Armillas. So if you can actually spell my name right, you'll find me everywhere.
Exactly.
And find my website, kathyarmillas.com. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll find me on Facebook. You'll find me on Instagram. You'll find me anywhere. If you spell my name right, you'll find me.
Exactly. And for those who have no clue how to spell it, it's CATHEYARMILLAS. And you'll find the link.
That's it.
And you'll find the links and everything in the show notes to click on as well. And you absolutely have my vouch for you guarantee. And if you want to watch my TEDx, you will actually find it on the Sleep Like a Boss website under public speaking. So that was it for today. Thank you so much, Kathy. I know that you are strapped for time and your brain is just golden. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks for having me.
And see all of you guys in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.